I found the envelope by accident on a Tuesday morning in March, when Eleanor had stepped out to sweep the front porch and left her coat draped over the stool by the register. It slipped from the inside pocket and landed face up on the linoleum floor. I almost didn't pick it up. I almost just nudged it under the counter and pretended I hadn't seen it. But I did pick it up, and the moment I read what was printed on the front, my hands went cold. It was a wire transfer confirmation from a private investment account. The amount was $4.2 million, and it had been sent just 11 days ago. I stood there in the empty diner, the smell of bacon grease and old coffee hanging in the air, and I thought about the woman outside pushing a broom across my porch. The woman who had shown up 17 months ago with a canvas bag, a pair of worn-out sneakers, and nothing else. The woman who slept on the pull-out couch in my storage room and woke every morning before I did to have the coffee brewing and the grill hot by the time I walked through the back door. The woman who had told me, when I'd asked about her past, that she was just someone who needed a reason to keep going. $4.2 million. I heard the scrape of the broom stop. I heard her footsteps on the porch. I slid the envelope back into her coat pocket and walked straight to the kitchen and stood over the sink with the water running, staring at nothing. Let me start from the beginning, because none of this makes sense unless you understand who I am and what my life looked like before Eleanor walked into it. My name is Dorothy. I'm 63 years old. I've run a diner in Millhaven, Ohio since I was 38, the year my husband and I scraped together everything we had and signed a lease on a building that used to be a hardware store. We called it Dorothy's, which my husband said was lazy naming, and I told him he could call it whatever he wanted as long as he showed up at 5 in the morning to crack eggs. He showed up every morning for 16 years, until his heart gave out on a Thursday in November. He was 59 years old. He had just finished rehanging the screen door. After he died, I kept the diner open because I didn't know what else to do with myself. My daughter had moved to Phoenix years ago, married a good man, had 2 kids I only saw at Christmas. She called every Sunday and told me I was punishing myself, that I should sell the diner and move somewhere warm and finally rest. I told her I wasn't tired. That was a lie. I was exhausted. But the diner was the last thing we had built together, my husband and I, and closing it felt like erasing him. So I stayed. And I managed. Until I didn't. The summer before Eleanor arrived, a new highway exit opened 12 miles south of Millhaven. It pulled traffic away from the old state route that ran past my front door. By September, my breakfast crowd had thinned to a handful of regulars and a few truck drivers who hadn't updated their GPS. By December, I was 3 months behind on my property taxes. By February, I had stopped paying myself a salary and was quietly selling things from the house to cover payroll for my 2 employees. A young woman named Kayla who needed the job, and an old cook named Gerald who had been with me for 11 years and would have worked for free if I'd let him. I didn't tell either of them how bad it was. I kept opening every morning at 6. I kept the pie case full. I kept pretending. Eleanor showed up on a Wednesday in early April, just before the lunch rush that wasn't really a rush anymore. She came through the front door carrying that canvas bag, wearing a plain gray jacket that was too thin for the weather, and she stood at the counter and looked around the diner the way someone looks at a place they're deciding whether to trust. She was older than me by a few years, maybe late 60s, silver hair cut short and practical, steady eyes, the kind of hands that had done real work. "Anything available?" she asked. Not rude, not pleading, just direct. I looked at her. "Coffee's fresh," I said. "I'm at work," she said. "I can cook, clean, wait tables, do inventory, whatever you need. I don't need much pay. A hot meal and somewhere to sleep would be enough for now. If that's something you could manage." I should have said no. I was barely keeping the lights on. I did not need another mouth to feed. But there was something in the way she stood there, not begging, not performing helplessness, just asking plainly like it was a reasonable business proposition that stopped me from sending her away. "What's your name?" I said. "Eleanor." "Eleanor what?" A small pause. "Marsh. I'm Dorothy. You want to tell me why you're in Millhaven, Ohio with a bag that size looking for kitchen work?" "Not particularly," she said. Then, after a beat, "I just need somewhere to land for a while." I looked at her another long moment. Gerald had called in sick that morning. I had 20 pounds of potatoes that needed peeling before the noon crowd arrived, both of them. "You know how to make soup?" I asked. "From scratch," she said. "Storage room's in the back. There's a couch. It's not comfortable." "I've slept on worse," she said. That was how it started. My daughter called that Sunday, and I made the mistake of mentioning it. There was a silence on the line that I had learned over the years meant she was choosing her words carefully. "Mom," she said finally, "you hired a stranger off the street." "She came in off the street, yes. And you're letting her sleep in the building." "It's just the storage room." "Mother, she only called me that when she was genuinely alarmed. You are a 62-year-old woman alone in a building with someone you know absolutely nothing about. Do you understand how dangerous that is?" "She made the best vegetable soup I've had since your grandmother's," I said. "That is not a safety assessment." "She's not dangerous," I said. And I knew it the way you know certain things that are impossible to explain logically. The way I had known, on my second date with my husband, that I was going to marry him. Some people you just read correctly from the start. My daughter drove up from Columbus, where she was visiting a friend, the following weekend. She came into the diner on a Saturday morning and sat at the counter and watched Eleanor work the room, refilling coffee, chatting with the farmers who came in for their weekly breakfast, remembering exactly how each of them took their eggs without writing anything down. Afterward, my daughter pulled me into the back and said, "Okay, she seems harmless," which from her was practically a glowing endorsement. "She's more than harmless," I said. "She's the best thing that's happened to this place in years." That was the truth. Within 2 weeks, Eleanor had reorganized my entire storage system, identified 3 food vendors who were overcharging me, and found cheaper alternatives, fixed the burner on the grill that had been running uneven for months, and started a small chalkboard special outside that somehow began pulling in customers who had never stopped before. She had a way with people, not warm exactly, more like precise. She knew how to make someone feel seen without making a production of it. She never talked about herself. I didn't push. We had a rhythm, and the rhythm worked, and I was too tired and too grateful to disturb it. The money trouble hit its worst point in September, 14 months after Eleanor arrived. The county sent a final notice. I owed $18,400 in back property taxes on the diner building. If I didn't pay within 60 days, they would begin proceedings to seize the property. I sat in my car in the parking lot and read the letter 3 times, and then sat there for another 20 minutes, watching the light change on the flat Ohio fields, trying to think of a single option I hadn't already exhausted. That night I stayed late after closing, sitting at the counter with a yellow legal pad, running numbers that didn't work no matter how I arranged them. Eleanor came out from the storage room around 10. She poured 2 cups of coffee and set one in front of me and sat down on the stool across the counter without being invited. "How bad is it?" she said. I looked up. I didn't say anything was bad. "You've been erasing and rewriting the same column of numbers for 40 minutes, she said. I put down the pencil. I don't know why I told her. Maybe because it was late and I was too tired to keep performing. Maybe because she had been standing next to me every day for over a year and she had earned it. I told her about the tax notice, about the amount, about the 60 days, about the fact that I had nothing left to borrow against and no one I could ask. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she looked at her coffee cup for a moment. "Give me a few days," she said. "Eleanor, I'm not asking you for—" "I know you're not asking," she said. "Give me a few days." She didn't say anything else about it. The next morning she was up at her usual time, coffee on, grill hot. 2 days passed. 3. I started to wonder if I had imagined the conversation. On the 4th morning, she came to the counter before I unlocked the front door and set down a certified check made out to Dorothy's Diner in the amount of $22,000. I stared at it for so long that Eleanor finally reached over and tapped the edge of it like she was making sure I could see it was real. "Eleanor," I said, and my voice came out strange and thin. "Where did this come from?" "I have savings," she said. "You have been sleeping on a storage room couch for 14 months. You have been accepting $30 a day and whatever I put on the table for dinner. Where do you have savings that produce $22,000? "From before," she said quietly, "when things were different." "That is not an explanation." "No," she agreed. "But take the check. Pay your taxes. Keep the diner. I wanted to push harder. Every reasonable part of me was screaming that something was wrong, that this made no sense, that I should demand a real answer before accepting a cent. But I was looking at 60 days and $18,400 I didn't have. So I took the check. I told myself I would get the explanation later. Later came 3 weeks after that. On the Tuesday morning, I found the wire transfer envelope on my floor. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed and thought about what I actually knew about Eleanor Marsh. I thought about the way she navigated the walk-in cooler inventory like someone who had managed supply chains before, not like someone who had spent their career waitressing. I thought about the time a difficult customer had started screaming at Kayla over a wrong order, and Eleanor had stepped in and handled it in about 40 seconds with a tone so calm and precise that the man had actually apologized and left a tip. I thought about the fact that she never made personal calls, never received mail, never mentioned a hometown, a family, a single friend. I got up at 4 a.m. and opened my laptop. I searched Eleanor Marsh. Nothing remarkable. Then, on instinct, I searched her differently. Eleanor Marsh, Biotech, Ohio. Eleanor Marsh, Pharmaceutical. I don't know why those words came to me. Something about the way she thought in systems. It took me 20 minutes of different combinations before I found it, a press release from 7 years ago in a business journal I'd never heard of. The headline was about a company called Virata Life Sciences being acquired by a larger pharmaceutical group in a deal valued at $340 million. The founder and CEO was listed as Eleanor Marsh, age 61, who had built the company over 22 years from a small research lab in Cincinnati into one of the leading mid-size biotech firms in the Midwest. I sat in my kitchen, in the dark, reading that article 4 times. She was worth over $300 million. She had been sleeping on my storage room couch for 17 months and accepting $30 a day and eating whatever I cooked for dinner. I went in early. I was already behind the counter when Eleanor came through the back door at 5:15. She took one look at my face and stopped moving. Virata Life Sciences, I said. The color didn't drain from her face exactly, but something shifted in it. She stood very still. You founded it, I said. You ran it for 22 years. You sold it for $340 million, and you have been washing dishes in my diner for $1 a day. She set down the dish towel she was holding. She came around the counter and sat down on the stool closest to me, and she looked at her hands for a long moment. I was going to tell you, she said. When? I don't know, she said honestly. I kept waiting for the right time, and then it kept not being the right time. Eleanor. I could hear the shake in my own voice, and I wasn't sure if it was anger or something else. I have been worrying about whether you were eating enough. I made you a birthday dinner with paper plates because I thought it might be a nice thing. I didn't even know if I had the right date. I have been treating you like someone who needed looking after, and all this time, I did need looking after, she said quietly. That part was true. I stopped. She looked up at me. After I sold the company, I had more money than I could ever spend and absolutely no idea what to do with myself. The work had been everything. 22 years of 16-hour days, building something from nothing, and then one morning it was done and I was 61 years old and I didn't know who I was without it. She paused. My son had been trying to get me to slow down for years. He said I was going to work myself to death before I ever enjoyed any of it. He had a daughter, my granddaughter, who was 4 at the time. He kept saying, "Come spend time with us, Grandma. Be present." And I kept saying, "Next year, after the acquisition, when things settle down." Her voice had gone very even, the way voices go when someone has worked hard at keeping control of them. The sale closed in October. My son and his wife were driving to Cincinnati to have dinner with me to celebrate. A delivery truck ran a red light on 71 North. She stopped, started again. He was 34. She was 32. They died at the scene. The diner was absolutely quiet. "Eleanor," I said. It was all I could get out. "My granddaughter went to live with her mother's parents in North Carolina," she continued. "They were kind people who were also devastated. And I was, to be perfectly honest, not someone capable of being around a child at that point. I fell apart completely. I had the money. I had the house in Cincinnati. I had every resource a person could ask for, and I could not get out of bed in the morning. I could not see the point. I woke up every day and thought, this is the life I chose over the years I could have spent with him. She picked up the dish towel again and folded it with great precision. I sold the house, put everything in managed accounts, and I left. I didn't have a plan. I just drove until I got tired and stopped. I spent a few weeks in Columbus, then Springfield. Then I found myself coming down 40 through Millhaven on a cold April morning, and I saw your sign and I thought, a diner is a real place. People do real things there. Maybe I can do something real for a while. I was quiet for a long time. Outside, the sky was starting to go gray at the edges. Why didn't you tell me? I finally said. Not accusatory. I genuinely wanted to understand. She looked at me directly for the first time in the whole conversation. Because you treated me like Dorothy. Not like Eleanor Marsh, biotech founder. Not like the grieving mother of a dead son. Not like someone whose net worth made me theoretically important. You argued with me about whether I was overworking myself. You made me sit down and eat before the dinner rush instead of working through it. You told me I had a good eye for people one morning after I'd handled a difficult customer, and you said it exactly the way you would say it to any employee who had done well. Do you know how long it had been since anyone treated me like an ordinary person who had simply done something ordinarily good? I didn't say anything. I needed that more than I needed another meeting about quarterly projections, she said. I needed to be somewhere that required me to show up and be useful in a small and immediate way. You gave me that. I thought about my husband, and about the diner, and about the 8 months after he died, when I had kept coming in every morning because the diner needed me to, and grief does not excuse you from the fact that people need their breakfast. I understood what she was saying. The $22,000, I said. It's nothing, Dorothy. I could write you a check today for every debt you have, and I would not notice it missing. That's not the point. No, she agreed. The point is that I didn't want to let you lose something you built with someone you loved. The same way someone should have told me not to let the years go by before I had dinner with my son. Her voice didn't crack, but it came close. I was not going to sit there and watch you lose this place because I was afraid of an awkward conversation. We opened at 6 as usual. Gerald came in. Kayla came in. The farmers came in. Eleanor and I moved around each other in the kitchen with the same routine we'd built over 17 months, and by the lunch hour, it was almost possible to pretend the morning had been an ordinary one, except it hadn't been. That evening, after closing, we sat in the same 2 stools with coffee, and I asked her about her granddaughter. Her name was Rosie. She was 6 now. Eleanor had not seen her since the funeral. She had called her mother's parents twice in the first year, and the calls had been stilted and painful, and she had told herself she would try again when she was doing better. And then she had kept not being better, and the time had kept passing. Do they know where you are? I asked. No, she said. Does anyone? My accountant knows I'm alive and functioning, she said. That's the extent of it. I thought about my daughter calling every Sunday. I thought about the way I had held on to her voice last winter when the heating unit broke and I was in the diner at midnight trying to figure out how to fix it, and she had stayed on the phone with me for 2 hours just talking about nothing important so I wouldn't feel alone. You have a 6-year-old granddaughter who lost her parents, I said carefully, and her father's mother disappeared. Eleanor looked at her coffee. I know, she said. That little girl is grieving too. I know that. Then you know what you have to do. She didn't answer right away. The refrigeration unit hummed. A truck went by on the state road outside. I don't know if they'll want to hear from me, she said finally. After this long. You won't know until you call, I said, and the longer you don't call, the harder that call gets. She looked at me for a moment with an expression I couldn't fully read. Then she nodded, once, like something had been decided. It took her 2 weeks. I didn't push. And then one afternoon she came out of the storage room with her phone in her hand and sat down at the counter and said, I called them. I set down the glass I was drying. Rosie's grandmother answered. Eleanor said, Her name is Patricia. She was very quiet at first, but she let me talk. And she said Eleanor stopped, pressed her lips together briefly. She said Rosie asks about her daddy's mom sometimes. That she knows there is a grandmother somewhere who hasn't been able to come yet. That she tells Rosie she'll come someday. I felt something shift in my chest. Patricia said I could come visit, Eleanor said. If I wanted? Do you want to? I asked. More than I've wanted anything in a very long time, she said. Her voice was rough at the edges. "I'm terrified." "That means it matters," I said. "Go." She went to North Carolina in November, just for 4 days. She came back changed in a way that I felt before I could see it. She came through the back door on a Sunday morning with that canvas bag, and she stood in the kitchen, and she looked like someone who had been carrying a very heavy thing for a very long time and had recently set it down. "She let me read her a bedtime story," Eleanor said. "Rosie." She picked the book herself. It was about a bear who gets lost in the woods and finds his way home. She set her bag down carefully. She fell asleep before the end. And Patricia said I could come back at Christmas. I didn't say anything. I just turned back to the grill and let the moment be what it was. Things changed between us after all of it came out, but not in the ways I expected. Eleanor didn't move to a hotel or suddenly start talking about going back to Cincinnati. She stayed. She still slept in the storage room, though she bought herself a proper bed to replace the pull-out couch, and she still showed up every morning before me to start the coffee. What changed was that she started contributing to the diner differently. Not secretly, not anonymously. She sat down with me one afternoon and spread out a legal pad and said she had been thinking about 3 specific things that could make the business profitable again, and she walked me through each one the way I realized she must have once talked to investors. She wasn't performing. She was just giving me what she knew, which was worth more than any dollar amount. We applied for a small business renovation loan, which we now qualified for because our books were no longer a disaster. We put in new seating. We started a catering side for the community events, the church lunches and the county fair and the high school graduations, the things Millhaven had that a highway bypass couldn't take away. Within 8 months, we were doing better than we had in years. My daughter came up in the spring and sat at the counter and watched Eleanor talk a nervous young couple through their first catering inquiry with the steady patience of someone who had spent decades in rooms where the stakes were considerably higher. Afterward, my daughter found me in the kitchen. "Okay," she said, in the tone she uses when she has been wrong about something and is processing it. "She's remarkable." "I know," I said. "Mom." I looked her up. My daughter's voice had gone careful. "Do you understand who she is?" "I understand exactly who she is," I said. "She's my business partner. She's my friend. And she's a grandmother who is learning to be present for her granddaughter." My daughter looked at me for a long moment. Then she hugged me, which she doesn't do in the middle of a conversation very often. "I'm glad you're not alone," she said. "I haven't been alone since April 2 years ago," I said. "Eleanor visits Rosie every 6 weeks now. She calls me from North Carolina sometimes, in the evenings when Rosie is asleep. She doesn't say much. She'll mention that they went to the park, or that Rosie showed her a drawing she made at school, or that they made pancakes in the morning and Rosie wanted them in the shape of animals. The smallness of it is obviously the point. The smallness of it is obviously everything. Patricia and Rosie came to Millhaven in July. Rosie spent 20 minutes sitting on the kitchen counter watching Gerald flip pancakes until Gerald handed her a spatula and let her flip one herself, which she dropped and thought was the funniest thing that had ever happened to any human being. She ran back and forth between the counter and the dining room delivering orders that were not hers to deliver. By noon, she had appointed herself official greeter at the front door and was telling arriving customers the specials with considerable authority for a 6-year-old who did not fully know what most of them were. Eleanor stood at the counter and watched her granddaughter work the room with an expression on her face that I recognized because I had worn it myself. Standing in the back of a school auditorium watching my daughter in a play, the particular helpless love of watching someone small be entirely themselves. That evening, after Patricia and Rosie had gone back to the motel and the diner was closed and clean, Eleanor and I sat in our usual spots with coffee. "She's extraordinary," Eleanor said. "She really is," I said. "She looks like him," Eleanor said. "Around the eyes. She makes the same face he used to make when he thought something was funny and was trying not to show it." I didn't say anything. Sometimes things don't need a response. "I wasted 3 years," Eleanor said quietly. 3 years I could have been watching her become exactly that person. "You can't get them back," I said. "But you're here now, and she's going to grow up knowing her grandmother." Eleanor looked out the window at the empty parking lot and the flat Ohio sky going dark. "I came to Millhaven because I needed somewhere to be a person again without everything I used to be attached to my name," I needed to find out if there was still something in me that was worth anything outside of what I had built. She looked at me, and what I found was that what was worth anything was what I had left undone. The people I had let drift. The granddaughter I had convinced myself was better off without the broken version of me. She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "You didn't fix me, Dorothy," she said. "You just gave me a place to stand still long enough to figure out what I needed to fix myself." I thought about that, about the morning I found her on the other side of my counter, practical and direct, asking simply if there was work. About all the mornings since, the two of us in the kitchen before the sun was fully up, working around each other with the easy economy of people who have stopped wasting motion. "I was going to sell the diner," I said. "After you came, I mean. I had started thinking about it seriously. I didn't see a way to keep it going, and then you walked in, and something in me decided to keep trying, and here we are." "Here we are," Eleanor agreed. Outside, a late truck moved down the state route, its lights sweeping briefly across the window. Somewhere down the road, a dog barked twice and went quiet. I thought about my husband rehanging the screen door on the last morning of his life, the satisfaction he'd had in a hinge set straight. I thought about Eleanor sitting in a sold house in Cincinnati with $340 million in accounts and nowhere she needed to be. I thought about the way certain kinds of loss are so large that they don't look like wounds anymore. They look like the whole landscape, like the sky itself has changed color, and you have to learn to navigate by the new light. I thought about the morning I had not sent her away, the morning I had looked at a stranger sitting at my counter and asked if she knew how to make soup. Sometimes the decision that saves you doesn't feel like a decision at all. It feels like a Tuesday morning. It feels like a practical question about soup and a practical answer and a cup of coffee across a counter. It feels like nothing until later, until you are sitting in a quiet diner on a summer evening, watching a little girl in a yellow shirt tell a farmer she has never met that the special is the pot roast, but he should also consider the pie. And you think, this is what I stayed for. This is what we were both trying to find our way back to. I'm 63 years old. The diner is still open. Eleanor is still here, at least 3 weeks out of every 4. She has an apartment in Millhaven now, a real one, 2 blocks from the building, though I suspect she still prefers the storage room for reasons neither of us has fully examined. Rosie calls her every Sunday. They are reading through a series of books together, 1 chapter over the phone each week, and Eleanor keeps the physical copy behind the counter so she can look up what comes next. My daughter visits more than she used to. She brought the grandkids up last August, and they ran laps around the diner and decided Gerald was the most interesting person alive, which Gerald found very agreeable. And some mornings, when the diner is quiet and the breakfast rush has thinned to the last few regulars, Eleanor and I stand at the counter with coffee, and don't say much and don't need to. We have the particular comfort of people who have seen each other at the bottom of things and decided to stay anyway. The particular ease of chosen family, which is the kind that tends to hold you tightest precisely because no one required it, because everyone who is there chose to be there, and chooses it again every morning they come back through the door. I don't know what I would call what we are to each other. Partners, maybe. Friends, certainly. Something the language doesn't quite have a clean word for, the kind of bond that forms between 2 people who each needed saving and each found, without meaning to, the person who would. She saved the diner. She didn't do it with the check, though the check mattered. She did it the way she has done most things, by showing up, quietly and every day, and doing what needed doing, and being, in all the ways that count, exactly the person she had somehow forgotten she was. And I think about the morning she came through my door, practical and worn at the edges, asking plainly if there was work, and I think about how easy it would have been to say no. I think about that more often than she knows. I'm grateful, every single day, that I didn't.